While this video provides the basics on how to switch out a clutch and flywheel, it is in no way intended to replace the factory service manual. This video features the installation of our street kit and streetlight flywheel. However, kits are available in different configurations based on the torque being produced at the crankshaft and your style of driving. ACT also offers kits for use with the OE dual mass flywheel. The installation procedures will be the same except for the disc and flywheel being used. Our kit lineup for this application are as follows. Remove the cover over the battery. Disconnect the ground cable from the battery. Then unfasten it from the vehicle body and completely remove it from the vehicle. Unfasten and remove the battery hold down. Disconnect the positive cable from the battery and disconnect the door from the battery box. Remove the air filter housing cover and remove the air filter element. Remove the air inlet pipes. Unfasten the clamp for the intake hose and remove the hose from the vehicle. Remove the air filter housing from the vehicle. Remove the cover from the fuse box and disconnect the harness. Remove the battery from the vehicle. Unbolt and remove the battery box. Unfasten the small cable at the bottom left of the door for the battery box and position the door out of the way. Remove the upper bell housing bolts. Unbolt and remove the battery box mounting base. Disconnect the shifter cables and move them out of the way. Disconnect the electrical connections at the front of the transmission. Remove the ground connection at the front of the transmission. Disconnect the master cylinder supply hose and plug the hose to prevent the hydraulic fluid from escaping. We used a vacuum plug for this. Unbolt and remove the bracket covering the starter. Unbolt the starter and pull it out of the transmission. Remove the front tire and wheel assemblies. Unfasten the axle nuts. Remove the splash guard from under the vehicle. Unfasten and remove the air pipe located under the engine and transmission. Unbolt the clamps and remove the mid-pipe from the vehicle. Unbolt and remove the chassis brace located toward the front of the vehicle. Unfasten the front driveshaft support. Before removing the driveshaft, make sure to mark the yoke and flanges so you can line the markings up during reassembly. Now unfasten the front of the driveshaft and then unfasten the rear of the driveshaft. Unbolt the rear driveshaft support and then remove the driveshaft. Unfasten and remove the crossbar. Remove the plug and drain the oil from the transmission. Install the plug and torque it to 26 foot-pounds. Beginning on the driver's side, unfasten the lower ball joint and remove the hardware. Now on the passenger side, unfasten the lower ball joint and remove the hardware. On both the driver's side and passenger side, remove the plastic guards from the lower control arms. On both the driver and passenger sides, unbolt the steering rod. On both the driver and passenger sides, pull the ball joints out of the knuckle assemblies. On both the driver and passenger sides, pull the steering rods out of the knuckle assemblies. On the driver's side, pull the axle shaft out of the knuckle assembly and then remove the axle shaft from the transmission. On the passenger side, unbolt and remove the axle shaft strap. Pull the axle shaft out of the knuckle assembly and then remove the axle shaft from the transmission. Unbolt and remove the brackets securing the transfer case to the engine. Unplug the electrical connection on the transfer case and free the wiring. Remove the clamps securing the coolant lines to the transfer case and use hose pinching pliers as you're pulling them off to prevent fluid loss. Remove the bottom bolt securing the transfer case to the transmission. Remove the bolt from the heat shield located on top of the transfer case. Remove the top portion of the bracket securing the exhaust to the transmission. Remove the top bolt securing the transfer case to the transmission and then remove the transfer case from the vehicle. Remove the driver's side inner fender liner. Remove the bottom part of the bracket from the transmission. Remove the lower transmission bell housing bolts. Remove the two-piece lower transmission mount. Place a stand under the engine. Unbolt and remove the top transmission mount. Remove the top transmission support bracket. Remove the remaining bell housing bolts and remove the transmission from the vehicle. With the transmission removed from the vehicle, unbolt and remove the original concentric slave cylinder and replace it with the new one included with your ACT clutch and flywheel kit. Lightly coat the input shaft splines with the purple Ceram lube included with your clutch kit. Slide the disc onto the input shaft and work the Ceram lube into the splines. Then remove the disc and wipe off any excess lube to prevent contamination of the clutch disc. Unbolt and remove the old pressure plate and disc. Unbolt and remove the old flywheel. Mount the flywheel using new OEM flywheel attachment bolts. Tighten the bolts in 3 steps. First to 37 foot-pounds in a star pattern, then 59 foot-pounds in a star pattern, and finally to 83 foot-pounds also in a star pattern. Make sure to clean the friction surface area with some sort of non-petroleum based cleaner. Before installing the disc and pressure plate, make sure to clean the pressure plate friction surface area with some sort of non-petroleum based cleaner. Set the disc in position and use the alignment tool to hold it in place. Now place the pressure plate in position and install the bolts. Tighten the bolts until snug in a star pattern and then remove the alignment tool. Now torque the pressure plate bolts in a star pattern to 24 foot-pounds. Lift the transmission back into place and install the lower bell housing bolts. Torque these bolts to 35 foot-pounds. Install the 2-piece lower transmission mount and hand tighten the bolts until you have all of them in place. Torque the 3 bolts securing the mount to the transmission housing to 59 foot-pounds. Torque the bolt securing these 2 pieces together and the bolt securing it into the chassis to 92 foot-pounds. Install the top transmission support bracket and torque the bolts to 59 foot-pounds. Install the top transmission mount and torque it to 109 foot-pounds. Remove the stand from under the engine. Install the upper bell housing bolts and torque them to 35 foot-pounds. Now place the transfer case back into position. Don't forget to reattach the rubber vent hose. Install the hardware and torque them to 59 foot-pounds. Reinstall the brackets that secure the exhaust to the transmission. Remember, this was removed in 2 separate pieces. Torque the hardware to 22 foot-pounds. Slide the hose clamps onto the solid lines of the transfer case and install the coolant lines to the transfer case while removing the hose pinching pliers as you're pushing them into position. Secure the lines with the clamps. Secure the electrical wiring on the transfer case and plug in the electrical connection to the sensor. Install the bracket securing the transfer case to the engine and torque the bolt on the engine side to 46 foot-pounds and the 2 bolts on the transfer case side to 18 foot-pounds. Install the driver's side inner fender liner. On the driver's side, install the axle shaft into the transmission and then into the knuckle assembly. Install the ball joint into the knuckle assembly and torque the hardware to 61 foot-pounds. Install the steering rod into the knuckle assembly and tighten the bolt to 35 foot-pounds. On the passenger side, install the axle shaft into the transmission and then into the knuckle assembly. Install the ball joint into the knuckle assembly and torque the hardware to 61 foot-pounds. Install the steering rod into the knuckle assembly and tighten the bolts to 35 foot-pounds. Install the axle shaft strap and torque the hardware in 2 steps. First the lower and upper to 5 foot-pounds, and then the lower and upper to 18 foot-pounds. Install the axle nuts, and with the vehicle off the ground, torque the nut to 59 foot-pounds, followed by tightening an additional 90 degrees. Install the tire and wheel assemblies and torque the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Mount the drive shaft, making sure to line the marks made during disassembly on the yoke and flanges. Mount both rear and front drive shaft supports to the vehicle. Torque the hardware to 18 foot-pounds. Install the hardware on both rear and front of the drive shaft and torque the hardware to 26 foot-pounds. Place the exhaust mid-pipe back into position and tighten the clamps. Install the air pipe located under the engine and transmission and tighten the clamps. Mount the plastic guards on the lower control arms. Mount the chassis brace located toward the front of the vehicle. Torque the 2 smaller nuts at the rear to 18 foot-pounds, the 2 larger nuts at the front to 35 foot-pounds, and the 4 bolts on the outside to 46 foot-pounds. Install the crossbar and tighten the hardware. Mount the starter in position and torque the mounting bolts to 26 foot-pounds. Install the bracket covering the starter. Install the ground cable at the front of the transmission. Remove the plugs and install the master cylinder supply hose into the bleeder assembly, making sure to engage the retaining clips. Bleed the clutch hydraulic system and make sure to check the reservoir level. Fill if necessary to the correct level. Remove the upper plug from the left side of the transmission and fill it with the vehicle manufacturer's specified type and amount of fluid. Install the plug and torque it to 26 foot-pounds. Install the splash guard. Attach the electrical connections at the front of the transmission. Place the shifter cables back into position on the bracket and reattach them to the linkage by pressing them onto the ball studs. Install the battery box mounting plate. Install the battery box. Place the battery into position. Install the battery hold down. Place the door for the battery box in position and reattach the small cable at the bottom left of the door. Remove the cover from the fuse box, reconnect the harness, and then place the cover back into position. Install and tighten the ground cable onto the battery and then fasten it back to the vehicle's body. Install the rear portion of the battery cover. Place the air filter housing into position. Install the air inlet pipes. Attach the electrical connector. Install the intake hose and tighten the clamps. Place the air filter element back into position and install the air filter housing cover. Install and tighten the positive battery terminal. Place the front portion of the battery cover in place. For more information on our products or the products featured in this video, please visit our website in the description below. If you found this video helpful, support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Thank you for watching.